Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Douglas County and Lawrence Joint Metropolitan Planning Commission meeting. Today is Monday, June 23rd. And to go over the rules of the meeting, I'm going to turn it over to Becky Pepper for the last time.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Please silence your cell phones to minimize distraction during the meeting. When the Chair calls for public comment, please approach the podium to indicate you wish to speak. Virtual participants should use the raise hand function to indicate that they wish to speak during public comment. Once your name is called, please unmute and turn your camera on to provide your comments. Please state your name before speaking. The city reserves the right to turn videos off or mute participants. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes. The primary format to access and participate in this meeting is in person at City Hall. Virtual access to view or participate in the meeting cannot be guaranteed. The chat function will not be monitored. If you have any trouble, the meeting can be viewed on the city's YouTube channel and cable channel 25. With that, I will turn it back over to the Chair.
Thank you, Becky. All right. So today we're going to elect officers for 2025 and 2026. I'm opening the floor to nominations. That being said, I nominate my Vice Chair, Commissioner Chelsea Hayden, to be Chair. Does anybody have any other nominations they'd like to entertain? If not, could I get a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Ask for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Just for the record, I'm abstaining.
You're abstaining. Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. I appreciate your trust in me. And with that, I am going to accept nominations for the vice chair. And I would like to nominate Commissioner Jane Eldridge as the vice chair to join me for this upcoming year. Are there any other nominations? Is there a second?
I will second that.
All right. All in favor? Say aye.
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 I'll abstain.
All right. Wonderful. Congratulations, Jane. And thank you for agreeing. And I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you. You have been a huge mentor and a wonderful colleague for all of us, leading us over the last year. And we really can't thank you enough for your leadership. And just seeing not only you grow over the last year into the position of chair, but helping all of us come along. It's been really fun to work with you, and I think we all really enjoy your dedication to this. So we would like to present you with a plaque expressing our gratitude for your service.
Very kind of you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And do you have any words you'd like to,
I'll keep it.
parting words for us, words of wisdom?
Well, I don't know if this is words of wisdom or what, but Commissioner Rexford and I used to walk a lot. We should walk more. And on one of these walks, we got to sort of the high point of our walk. We're feeling a little sort of, happy. And we were comparing Planning Commission to jazz. Do you remember this? And, we talked about when it's at its best, the conversation is flowing and everybody's, giving input. And he said, as chair, sometimes you're making jazz and sometimes you're the room that the jazz gets made in. So it's, So that always stuck with me. So you make your own music, however you want to make it. But all the best.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate your music over the last year.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
and that you will be continuing. I
I'll be
expect to hear you.
I'll be here. Until
Yes.
Jeff kicks me out, right?
Yes, I know that you'll still be in the orchestra.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. With that, we will move on to the action summary. Are there any action summaries or minutes from other? Is this just approval of the minutes? You can tell I'm new.
Okay.
Is this where we're approving the minutes from the May 28th, 2025 meeting? So I'll be looking for a second to approve those meeting minutes.
A second.
All right. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Now we will go on to the committee reports. Are there any reports from the committees that have met over the past month?
Well, Charlie and I both attended the Lawrence Douglas County Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Board, and that was in the middle of June. I forget the exact date. Do you remember, Charlie? And that was very interesting because that was the time when that committee approved the Vision Zero report, which is aimed at getting us to the place where we will not have any accidents, any fatalities, as a pedestrian or as a driver or as a bicycle rider. And we have, the City of Lawrence has one, and Baldwin and Eudora have also participated in this program. And the second thing we did at that meeting was to approve the temporary emissions, can't remember what it's called, temporary emissions report, transportation emissions reduction program. And that we were approving with the Lawrence, Massachusetts Street Multimodal Transportation Emissions Reduction Project. And that too obviously dealt with transportation. But those are two great big and very interesting reports, I would say.
The research that was done on accidents in Baldwin, Eudora, and Lawrence, so detailed, they can tell you any intersection, what happened, why it happened. One of the things that I thought was best is there are some things, they called them quick fixes, that when a problem is identified, that there are some projects that can be done very quickly to help remediate that area. Jessica Mortinger and Cece, my goodness, that was a great report. It was really good.
Wonderful. Thank you. And that's publicly available if anyone in the public would like to jump onto the Douglas County Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Board to find that report. Moving on to communications. Is there any written communications from the public?
All communications received by the deadline were included as part of your packet this evening.
Are there any written communications from staff, planning commissioners, or other commissioners?
None this evening.
Are there any written action of any waiver requests or determinations made by the city engineer?
Also none this evening.
Okay. And at this time, I'll turn to the commission to see if there is any disclosure of ex parte communications for this evening's matters. All right. Any abstentions or special agenda items to be brought? All right. At this time, we'll move into general public comment. This is the point in our meeting where we will hear from the public on any matter that is not on the agenda. So if you're here to speak about something that is not on tonight's agenda, please approach the podium or raise your hand on mute or on Zoom, and we will unmute you. I'm not seeing anybody on Zoom. Becky, are you? Okay, thank you. So then we'll move into our regular agenda. And generally, the way that we will run through this, we have 3 items tonight. When an item is taken up, the applicant will have 10 minutes to speak on the issue. The public will have 3 minutes for comments, each individual, and then the applicant will have a 5-minute response time. It can be difficult to see the time clock over here, so if you are a member of the public and you're speaking, I'll kind of try to raise my hand or make a motion to let you know that you're out of time so that I don't interrupt your thought process. But that will mean please wrap it up or we're out of time. And if you don't, I'll have to mention it. So with that, staff will start with the first agenda item. We'll have our staff report, and it is tonight with Jeff Crick.
Good evening, commissioners. I know some of you are looking like, wow, you actually give staff reports.
We didn't know you worked. Just kidding.
What a way to start your leadership.
It tells you how close we are.
Wow, it's great to jump in on this one here. This is a unique one you don't see very frequently. This is asking for you to make a recommendation for conformance for a TIF district and a STAR bond related to the KU Gateway project, which I think most of you are familiar with, but the KU Gateway project is effectively the area around Memorial Stadium. And you may have noticed there's also been a construction site for the last 12 months out there, so they've been doing a little bit of work. This is for Phase 2 as part of that, and Phase 2 includes the eastern half of the football stadium. It would include about approximately 150-room hotel, 443 beds of student housing, approximately 43,000 square feet of commercial uses. So if you think of retail, restaurant, office uses like that, a net increase of 640 parking spaces, which will be included as part of a podium parking project. It's a way of saying there'll be a parking garage that the buildings will rest on top of, effectively, is the best way to describe that. And then also they'll have a 20,000 square foot gateway amenity, so a plaza and entry procession that goes into the stadium and kind of up towards Campanile Hill and going up that direction there. As part of the project, it will also include any number of things, but it will also include the watershed project that the city has been working on because of the upstream effects of this. There will be downstream that comes with part of that. This will be rolled into the package as part of that process. As part of your conformance review, we went through the comprehensive plan to take a look at it, and there are some very specific chapters that really hit on it more than others, if you could imagine. There's some where it little may not or not at all, but the ones we did highlight were growth and development. This is in Tier 1, which is prioritized for development at any time. And we also wanted to highlight the connection of 9th Street as part of this project. While the project isn't directly sitting on 9th Street, if you think about the more regional transportation network, if you're coming in from the south or the north, you're probably making your way to Iowa Street and then also probably to 9th Street to get to Mississippi. If you're coming from I-70, you may be getting off at the North Lawrence interchange and also coming over the bridge, which will basically lead you either to Massachusetts Street or Tennessee, or you can kind of get down to 9th Street. So 9th Street becomes a very important east-west connector, and we wanted to highlight that as part of the conversation. Reason being is 9th Street's been a prominent discussion point for the community for the better part of, in recent years, about the last 10, but even going back further than that, it's been a very key connector to everything. As you all know, 15th Street doesn't proceed through the university effectively, so the last east-west connection before 23rd Street effectively, 19th Street becomes 9th Street. And so that corridor has a little bit of a greater role that could be played as part of this process. And one thing we wanted to highlight was that 9th Street transitions in 3 different segments as you move down the corridor. So as you proceed from Iowa Street towards Kentucky, it's a minor arterial. From Kentucky to Connecticut, you get into a collector. And as you go from Connecticut to Delaware, you start moving into a local street. But wanted to highlight is there's also been the 9th Street plan that was in place for basically Massachusetts east to the 8th and Penn Arts District. And that's been in place for getting close to 10 years now at this point in time. And so that western lake connection is also just as equally important. It is something that Municipal Services and Operations is looking at as part of the reconfiguration when they do the watershed projects and how to dial that all in together. So wanted to highlight that as part of the conversation because that is part of that regional connectivity of what we get into. Also just wanted to highlight a little bit about in Chapter 3, we talk a lot about mixing of uses. We talk a lot about those conversations around the way around how uses can interplay, and it includes also stadium projects. And so when you start compiling a lot of uses together, there is a little bit of a synergy. There is a little bit of a confluence that would occur there. And of course, one of the things we highlight in Plan 2040 is, downtown is kind of a very key aspect for Lawrence and Douglas County, and how does that interplay come together? And in the conversations that you've seen both at the city commission level and also in just the package that you have today, we don't see that as necessarily playing away from downtown as much as being an enhancement to it. It does contain a convention center in phase 1. It does contain a hotel that would be there. And there has been good, strong dialogue between the project and downtown to kind of bring those two together. And also, given the distance between the two is really not that great if you think about it. It is a bit of a walk, but it's not like, Iowa Street to Mass. There is a bit of that connectivity that goes in there. So we didn't see it as being detrimental or harmful necessarily to downtown in that respect. One thing we did want to highlight was the neighborhood and housing plan. And so while the project itself does not sit in the Oriad neighborhood plan, the Oriad neighborhood plan is adopted by reference into Plan 2040. And we wanted to highlight some of the externalities that could be generated by the project just as a whole there. And just as a reminder, the football stadium was originally constructed in the 1920s, so it's been there for quite a while. So it has been a component of the area for a number of years. But there is a lot of different aspects that come with projects that may not mesh necessarily and hold immediately with it. And we wanted to highlight those that you can see in the staff report. So while it would increase connectivity, we think both in the street network and in the walking and the sidewalks, which is something the plan was calling for, there may be other effects to the stadium that may not be exactly aligned with what we saw in the neighborhood plan itself. And we highlighted a few of those. So, as those linkages will start to be a little bit more important. So as parking is probably always one that people talk about, and the university is working diligently to find solutions to that as part of the project itself. So did want to highlight that as the Chapter 4 review. And of course, I've kind of touched on Ninth Street, but I just want to highlight it again as part of Chapter 5, which is transportation, which is that connectivity and that linkage between these commercial uses in downtown themselves. And so you'll see that in the discussion. Chapter 6, economic development, talks a little bit at a much higher level than what a project would normally do. It talks about green energy, IoT, very technologically advanced jobs, primary employers. So while this project would be bringing jobs to the market effectively, a different range of it, it wouldn't necessarily be in the same ones that Plan 2040 was specifically highlighting. However, it's, at some point there are jobs that are coming in, there are new opportunities that are opening up. So we think it does, while not necessarily meshing in whole with that, it does bring some of that essence of it into the conversation for that. And of course, we also wanted to highlight community resources and community facilities in Chapter 7, which is essentially, working to have those kind of projects that go together kind of come together. And typically we think of this as having a park next to an elementary school, which is probably the one that we all tend to think of. But you can also think of it in different ways of having commercial next to an entertainment venue, which is what you see on Massachusetts Street and in other parts of town, or restaurants close to employment centers. So there's a lot of different ways to have those. But what we thought with this one was not the traditional way that you would have thought about it. It is a good public-private investment opportunity that does bring and kind of mirror two uses together that will really work well in a package as a whole. So based on the review of what we had, our professional recommendation is that request you make a finding that the STAR bond and the tax increment financing project are consistent with the comprehensive plan, and forward that to the City Commission with that recommendation. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. And while I was being facetious earlier, I very much appreciate your report and the fact that you highlighted where you thought it did and didn't comply with the plan. Because before we move into the applicant, just so that we frame it correctly, we are here to look at whether or not the project and the land use of the project is in conformance with Plan 2040, and that's really the only issue before us. So is that correct?
Correct. It would not be, your purview does not relate to the finances. It doesn't relate to the application of zoning to the KU property, because the land development code cannot extend to the KU property. What you're really looking at is in the project in totality conform to Plan 2040's kind of mission and essentially.
Thank you. Unless there's an objection, I'll move into the applicant. Okay. Okay, would the applicant like to address the commission?
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Jeff DeWitt. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the University of Kansas. That is Kansas City, Lawrence, all the campuses across the university. Previously was a CFO for Phoenix, Arizona, and Washington, D.C., and I know the importance of planning commissions and conformance with long-range plans. So I want to try to walk you quickly through the presentation and show you how it does do that and how that works. In terms of, I assume you can see the presentation there. Yes. Okay. So if you look at the screen and you look at this project, this is the future view by 2028. There's lots of things that have to happen. Right now, the west side, which is the top of that, and on the one side on the right, which is where the conference center is, will open in August. That facility will be able to have 200 plus events a year. It's not a football stadium. It's a multi-purpose venue that does conferences and all kinds of other things that can happen there. If you look just to the other side of the stadium, the east side, which is the closer side on the page, that is phase 2 of the project that we're talking about. We're going to complete the east side, and you have to complete the east side because it's more vertical, so you're pushing it in closer. And when you push it in closer, then you can build the podium parking. When you build the podium parking, you can put the student housing on top of it, and you can put the hotel there. And there's a part, the podium parking is where a lot of the parking spaces will be. There'll be some surface spots as well. So the concept here is to have a once-in-a-generation transforming economic development, transformational type of project that when students come to visit, we're in massive competition across the country with enrollment changes and everything, is to have a gateway, a place where you come to and you see what the University of Kansas looks like in a way you've never seen before. You see the Campanile right through the corridor there. You're going to see that. You could stay there your junior year in the hotel. See the Campanile where you're going to walk through 4 years later, maybe 5, 6 years later if you're a junior, and graduate. And all the activities that will be there for the Lawrence community and for the university. Student housing is in there, and we have the need to probably build 1,000 beds. This gets us 45% of the way there. And we have plans to do more student housing. A hotel there, which will be a Marriott brand Cascade type of hotel. With the applicant says 150, we're guaranteeing at least that many. The actual plan is 162 rooms with condominiums on top. And then there's a really, really, really cool World War I museum that will be on the capability as what you see in Washington, D.C., that will be built into this because it's a David Booth Memorial Stadium. It's a World War I memorial. We want to keep that intact. So all that has massive impacts to the university and we hope to the city of Lawrence. And it's meant to complement Massachusetts Street and connect to it and lift the whole community in terms of economic development. You're bringing other people's money in. You're bringing tourism in. You're bringing conferences in. You're bringing events in that will help the sales tax base of the city and the county and the state, and also be an important asset to the university. So I'm going to, how do you get this to change here? So just quickly, this is what it will look like in August. So if we do nothing, you're going to have that. You're going to have a multi-purpose stadium with a conference center, stadium. You're going to have the old side of the stadium still there, and there'll be a parking lot. That is what opens in August. A big, big change. Lots of things have happened. $448 million project. Phase 2 is to make it complete. And when you talk to the Oakview Group, who's the operator of the stadium on our behalf, they run McCormick Place in Chicago. They own the Moody Center in Texas. This is a big boy, girl kind of vendor that we have helping us here. They believe that phase 2 doubles the output of the stadium. So it's really important to do that to get the full benefit of that. Here's what this looks like. Again, I talked about it a little bit. You can see the podium parking in the black at the bottom where the parking is underneath the apartment areas in the plaza. 162-room hotel, 16 condominiums, 443 student housing, 43,000 square feet of retail, office space, and restaurants, parking spaces, replacing what we lose and adding more. A gateway plaza. This plaza can be a community place to have events year-round. It's not just a stadium. It's a plaza and a stadium together, integrated together, and everything integrated together. The hotel will actually connect to the conference center, so it'll be actually connected, so you can have a wedding party in the hotel and then go right into the conference center and have your reception. Nice view of the Campanile while you're there if you're a KU grad. All kinds of things like that are out there. And again, it more than doubles economic potential of phase 1. Again, some more details. KU store, and we had these conversations with the business community downtown. We've had, I don't know how many, I think I've done 40 presentations now of this to different groups. We had 12 neighborhood meetings, lots of meetings with downtown, and telling them we're trying to do something to complement, not compete. And so 7,500 to 1,000 square feet KU store, restaurants, student-focused markets, office space, totaling about 43,000 square feet. And that is the plaza you're looking at a picture of right there. Community benefits, entertainment and recreation, community gatherings. It helps it be a multi-use facility and conference center, attract more people to come. And it's the first impression you'll get when you see KU. Economic benefits, again, it's critical to University of Kansas for its recruiting and competing with other universities across the country. We all have it complement Mass Street, so we can raise Mass Street to another level by having this connect to it. And by the way, that's my favorite picture. You can see the Campanile right through the corridor there. That's probably my favorite rendering so far. I can't wait to see that. Fully functioning conference center, higher end corporate and convention revenues. The hotel is critical to be able to have those higher end people come and stay longer. It's a Marriott quality hotel, critical apartments that are absolutely needed for our student housing and to help with housing challenges that the city of Lawrence has, and then parking to support the development. Here's the benefits, almost $2 billion in direct and indirect economic benefit. This is done by the consultant that does work for the state. We had them do a study for us. I actually used them in Washington, D.C. too. It's a model you use that says how many jobs, how much money will this create. almost $2 billion in economic benefit, $418 million in jobs. And as Jeff mentioned a minute ago, these are more your hospitality, retail type of jobs that this is creating, but it's bringing other people in to bring revenue to the university and to the city. Incremental sales tax to the city over and above what's committed to TIF and STAR bonds, $27.8 million, $32.5 over 20 years to the county. And when these are paid off, and if they're paid off, early, then the money starts flowing to the city and the county. So as soon as you pay the bonds off, this is what you get while the bonds are being paid off. And then an increase in property tax over the period. Here's the project, $448 million, phase one. We got $85 million from the state through ARPA and through grants that they gave us. So the state is paying for the conference center. That's about what the conference center is. So the state is they're providing grants to allow us to build the conference center, which is a 50,000 square foot facility that I know Lawrence has been looking at getting for years. The state is a contributor to that. And then this is a real public-private partnership. We've got the private sector putting $126 million in for the apartments and the apartment-style student housing and the hotel. They pay for that. The economic development tools, STIF, STAR bonds and TIF, which we're talking about today, help do the infrastructure, the podium parking, and the infrastructure needed for the facility. And we have a lot of donors stepping up. We have donors that will have put probably $350 million into this project before it's all over with, from all over the place. Some very generous people helping us get this done. So this is probably one of the least leveraged in terms of debt projects that you'll ever see in a stadium. One of the highest donor contributions, and then the partnership with the city, state, and county. This is a really unique project. And so that's just a high-level summary, and I see I'm going to beat the 10 minutes here. That's good. This is a picture of the plaza that we hope you'll be able to see a few years from now. Again, we're going to complete the east side of the stadium, build the parking garage, the podium, put the plaza on top of it, put student housing on top of it, build a hotel. There's a lot of work to do, a lot of things going on, lots of planning and designing going on. But this really is a once-in-a-generation transformational economic development project, almost $750 million that this project will take to deliver. And it's also going to be providing stormwater project for the city that's part of this project as well, that comes with the TIF bonds that we'll be issuing. And I believe, I've lived here 4 years. Again, I've lived in Arizona, I've lived in Washington, D.C., grew up in Southern Illinois. 3 kids, all went to college, visited colleges all over the country. This is one of the coolest college towns in the country. And this is a chance to make it even cooler and to really lift KU and lift the city of Lawrence. And it's really a pleasure. Heather is here with me. Heather Blank, her full-time life is this project. She's on this full-time now as running this project. And we're partnered with athletics. We're partnered with our endowment. We're partnered with university, with the community. And I meet with Craig, city manager, every Friday since, I think, Christmas. So we've gotten to know each other. Jeff and I speak every week, every Friday. We want to partner in this, make it work together. And that's what it's going to take. I have, again, been the CFO in Washington, D.C. and Phoenix, and it works best when you partner with the community. When the development partners with the community, you get a better project. And so we're committed to doing that on the housing side, on the parking side, talking to the neighborhoods, talking to the business community, and trying to make this project work to the best it can. So that's a quick overview, and I think you'll see this aligns to what you're looking for in 2040. It has all the elements that you're looking for, I believe, and be glad to stand for any questions you may have.
Great, thank you. I'll bring it back to the commission. If they have any questions, they will ask questions of you.
Public comment.
Is there any public comment? Anyone online?
I am not seeing anybody raise their hand indicating that they wish to speak.
Okay, at that point, I will bring it back to us for discussion then.
One question.
Yes.
If I could ask the applicant, if you could talk just a little bit about how you are thinking about parking as it relates to the Orion neighborhood. That's been a chronic, long-term problem that's been the fears have been exacerbated with the changes in the land development code. And now comes this in that same area. You're adding parking. Have you done studies to look at what the parking's like there? Are you a net positive to this problem, or talk a little bit about that, please? That
is the most frequent question that I get in of all the 42 meetings I think I have, parking comes up every single time, so it not surprising. we had a parking study done of the impact on the neighborhood, and the approximately 1,000 parking units is what we'll need to deal with the development and ensure that there's adequate parking. We've actually added a $5 million budget to the project to do more surface parking in the area to ensure that that's dealt with. So we have a parking challenge at KU everywhere, as everyone knows who tries to find a parking place. But in terms of this development, we are intentionally building the parking you're seeing and the design you're seeing to ensure that it addresses the parking that this project will generate. And there's a parking study we've shared with the neighborhoods and talked to them about. But everybody always wants more parking. And, so we're going to we'll be building the parking, and then we're going to be doing a study of all of our parking to figure out how to optimize what we have, because I think we can probably do that better as well. But, we're committed to looking at that and working with the city in terms of enforcement and things like that happen. But there's a reason why that podium is the size it is. There's a reason why we're moving the stadium in first to make sure that gets built. There's a reason why we're looking at parking in other places, is to address what the parking study said.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Eldridge.
Thank you very much for doing this presentation. I think it's just a marvelous project. And I think that you're very lucky to also have the Spencer Museum right next door. And I wanted to be sure that you were leaving room for the Spencer to expand, should it need to.
Thank you for bringing that up. I spoke to the Spencer Museum Board probably, a month ago, and they asked the very same question you just asked. I think, the distance between where the stadium is and the Spencer Museum, and there's discussions about expanding it. There's all kinds of opportunities to bring the Spencer Museum into this project and make it an even better result in the long run. So yes, we are thinking about that. If you talk to Sarah, she has all kinds of ideas of how we can integrate it together, and we've had those discussions with her as well.
Because that museum is one of the top 10 for all college and university museums. It's really a jewel.
I lived in Washington, D.C. on Pennsylvania Avenue and spent many a weekend at the Smithsonian museums. Love to go to and this one, I've said this many times, I go there quite often, usually quietly so they don't know I'm there. And the art there is as good as you see at the Smithsonian in Washington. It is really an awesome asset to the university. So yeah, we're going to make sure that thing's taken care of.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes.
To follow on to Commissioner Rexroad's question about parking, obviously the new parking, you're going to have to pay for it. It's not like students are going to park there for free. If there's a big event, what's going to stop those people that are coming in to that event from taking up the on-street parking that is still free?
Well, those are things where we've been speaking to the city about, is how do we ensure we have enforcement around the area? And, there'll be, for this project to be successful all by itself, you've got to have adequate parking for the retail to work, or people, they won't come. They want to be able to park. And you got to have adequate parking for the housing, or you'll start flooding it into the street. So you make sure there's enough for the student housing is there. But obviously enforcement around the area is another thing that we'll be looking at. But again, we're trying to get the number of spaces to try to make that not as bad as it could be. If we do nothing, and you look at that picture where there's just a parking lot and the stadium is there, that's going to be the challenge, right? There's no new parking until we get this built, so we want to get going on this real quickly.
Okay, next question. The student housing, will that be at the going rate of the current student housing, or is that going to be geared towards athletes, and much like the last thing that was built was or is?
Yeah, so our athletes are largely in Hawker, which is up on the hill.
Right.
Endowment purchased that a couple years ago. So this will likely be, it will be on the apartment style housing similar to Stouffer that's on campus now. And then the other thing we're going to need to build is more residence hall. We have a very wide variety of housing on the university, from the scholarship halls where you can work and do your own cooking and clean your own thing up, and those are relatively low rates, to residence halls, to apartments. Apartments are the higher price level for students. So this is going to be an apartment style. It makes the mixed use work. And then we're going to need to build residence hall, which is our next project, probably a 600 beds somewhere. And we got authority from the state to borrow $100 million to do that project. So that is going to be starting in earnest as well. So this is the type of housing we need to attract the students that we're recruiting, that, you know, to be competitive, but we also need more residence halls. So we're going to be looking at that too.
Okay, and lastly, because I asked this question, and I think at our last, I forget what the event's called, but our annual planning for the year, I asked about the hotel specifically. What of the profit-generating pieces will provide property tax to the county?
So the value of
Because I
the,
know it's different when it sits on that campus.
yeah, so right now that land is not subject to property tax because it's university land. So what we will be doing is we'll be doing a land transfer to endowment for the podium and the hotel and the apartment, because it's going to be privately built, and that property value of that development will be subject to property taxes.
From day one?
Yeah, because they can't start building until they have a long-term lease, and we can't do a long-term lease. This endowment can, so it's going to go into, quote, private hands, which makes it taxable. We have to do that to get the development built, and then that makes it TIF eligible, because so when the TIF's paid off, it's going to be perpetually, it's going to really kind of be off campus. It's going to be privately owned right next to the stadium so that it's subject to property taxes, and so private development can occur on it. This is a real public-private partnership. We're not building a hotel. God knows I don't want us to. We don't need to be owning a hotel. And the apartments will be privately developed as well.
So I have a couple questions coming off that then. So then for the hotel aspect, and these might actually be questions for staff, but for the hotel portion of it then, if it's going to not be university property, then does that mean the land development code will apply to that development?
It would not, no.
Okay. Can you explain for the public and me why?
So the cooperative agreement still take place in hold on part of, because what it is, it's part of the stadium redevelopment project. And because it's part of the stadium and the practice of it, it's still subject to the agreement and the cooperative agreement itself, which is very similar to what you see on the other parts of KU's campus, like the BTBC or the Business Technology Center. So it's those kind of projects. So while it may not be a classroom or a facility like that, it's still subject to the cooperative agreement. So the land development code would not apply.
So it's different for taxable purposes. Oh, yes, Randy?
There's Randy Larkin, Deputy City Attorney. That property is going to be, in my understanding, owned by KU Endowment, and it's going to be leased to this company. KU Endowment, for the purposes of the agreement, is the same as the university, so it's going to be under the KU agreement. So it's as if the university is owning it, but it's going to be in the name of KU Endowment.
Okay. It just is different for tax purposes.
Yes, and when you look at this, the area of this is a stadium. It's not just we could have just replaced the old football stadium. Everything's integrated together. The parking garage connects to the stadium, the plaza connects to the stadium and to the development, the hotel, you'll be able to go out a door and into the convention center. It is really one big stadium project, but it's more than a stadium.
Wonderful. Thank you. Other questions?
So when I went through and read some of the things, I'm not sure that it is germane to what we are deciding, but I didn't understand some of the things that were in here. One, I'd have to look at the page, but it says these plans are not inflexible. In the document, it says they're not inflexible. And so I wonder, how tied down are these plans then?
We have a proposal from a developer, Edgemoor Sunflower, the same entity that built the airport, Kansas City Airport. So we have their proposal we're working with and negotiating on them. So, there's some flexibility in working with the city to make sure, how we transport people from the hotel to downtown and how the parking works and all that type of thing. But to some degree, we need a hotel about that size. We need student housing about that much. We know we need that much parking because of the parking study. So those things I think we need to figure out how to do. But the details of negotiation, I think, is what that meant. I would, as we're looking at how we make this work together and make sure that it works with the neighborhood, it works with the business community, and it's the connectivity and things like that I think we have to be flexible on.
Okay, if anybody wanted to look on page 15 of 45 at the top, it says we're not planning, we don't plan on taking any land, needing any more land, but if we do, or if the city does, then here's a $500 payment that KU is going to make to these people, and if they have to be moved out, it will be into an apartment or a place that they can afford.
I'll defer to Jeff, but I can try to answer that if he's not comfortable.
I believe it's the reference in one of the, I can't remember if it's the Star Bond or TIF, or it may actually be in both of them, where if somebody's displaced and this is the process that it goes through, it's my understanding that's part of the requirement of the agreements to have that kind of language.
That's
in there.
Star Bond required language. If you do something with Star Bonds to displace people, these are things you must do. We believe we have all the land we need to do this project, so we don't have any concepts of anything we don't already have to do that. But that's a Star Bond requirement. that
So just a
says-
boilerplate
Yes,
has
yeah, yeah.
to be in.
If you're going to do Star Bonds, you have to follow those rules, is basically what that does. That's a state commerce, state of Kansas requirement.
Okay, and then at the bottom of page 13, let me see if that's the GO-TIF bonds will be repayable first by the TIF revenues generated within Project Area 1, and if not so paid, then from the full faith and credit of the city. Since I'm not a contract lawyer person, what does that even mean?
I'll be honest with you, I'm not a in-depth city finance person either, but I will say that's a little bit beyond the purview of the commission, unfortunately.
That's what I was saying, but there are things that I just didn't understand that I was reading in here, in the paperwork we were given.
We wanted to give you the documents that are going forward so you could see what the city commission will ultimately be seeing going forward. So we wanted to make sure that you had the plans and proposals put forward. And there is a lot of language in there that's either a requirement of the state statute or the Commerce Department or any other number of entities in there. But we wanted you to have that so you could see the land use elements and understand the linkages and ties that those have. So that's probably a concern for the city commission to be aware of and tie into, because they do have the power of the purse in that respect. But we just wanted you to have the same documents for the conversation.
And I'd be glad to talk to you later about how that works and what that is if you want to. But yeah, it's they're doing general obligation bonds. The city is to help do the stormwater project. It'd be a lot less expensive. They'll get a lot more bang for the buck. And so that language is required when you do that. But I can get into more detail later if you'd like.
Well, if it is not germane to this, it
Yeah, okay.
probably isn't going to mean much. There were just questions. You're going to transport people for free from out there to downtown Lawrence.
I'm sorry.
Again, the document says you're going to transport people from this area
Yes.
for free to downtown Lawrence.
When you come to a conference, you don't, at least most people don't, just stay in the hotel and hang out for the 4 days they're there. They want to go see the community. So it's to make this a really, truly integrated project. We need to get people from the conference event where there may be 1,000 people staying in a hotel. We need to get them downtown. So we're working with the hotel operator to figure out how to get people to the downtown area, because you want them to come back 4 years from now when their conference comes up again. So you want it to be a really good experience. And so these are things that we're committing to, is making sure we're connected together. It's to everybody's benefit, including our project, for that to be that way.
Well, this paperwork doesn't have anything to do with what we're going to vote on, but it is, I was curious about several things in it.
And I do believe that this will be in front of the city at some point if this moves on and goes forward, and they will be handling a bunch of the more nitty-gritty aspects of it. So certainly, if the public is interested in these conversations, they can continue and be taken up with the city.
And I should add, it looks like a great project to me. It looks like this should benefit the city, the county, the state. It looks terrific to me.
Are there any other questions or discussion or ready to call for a vote? Okay.
Can I make a last comment?
We have, yes, please.
I will support what we are talking about tonight, even though, as most of you know, I'm usually wearing purple up here, and you know where I'm from. And when I
I'm sorry.
And when I try and compare this project to everything that has happened up the river in the last 20 years, and that none of it was done with tax dollars, I'm a little disappointed in this from that perspective. But I will support this and what we are voting on.
I'd make a motion that we make a finding that the KU Gateway Star Bond and Tax Increment 5 project districts are consistent with the intent of the city's comprehensive plan for the development of the city of Lawrence.
Is there a,
On the city commission.
is there a second? Any further discussion? I would just like to say I'm going to vote in favor of it because I think the staff report did a great job laying out the pros and cons and the balance of it and the overall support for it. So I intend to vote in favor. But.
Looks like we do have a hand raised
Oh.
online.
Oh, that's,
That's Michael.
My apologies. I raised my hand. My camera caught me. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sorry.
Any further discussion before the vote?
I do have a question, and that is the recommendation that we had from staff talks about a finding that the proposed KU Gateway Star Bond and tax increment financing districts. And you didn't use the word proposed, and I was wondering if there was a reason that you had eliminated it. Then I'm going to make a friendly amendment that we include that as the proposed.
Wonderful. Is a second, Michael?
Yep,
Do you
second. I'll
all right, wonderful.
be careful.
Any other, any other discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion?
aye.
Is Commissioner Munch? Yep.
Aye.
Right. All right, thank you. That concludes the matter. We will move on to item number 2. Which it was originally scheduled for a joint meeting with the Lecompton Planning Commission, but it's my understanding that they will not be here this evening. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, wonderful. So we'll move on to the staff report by Mary Miller.
That's a really exciting project. I think it's a really exciting project.
Do I need to hit share?
Yeah, please. Yep, that's you.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Mary Miller, City County Planner, and this is a rezoning request for approximately 6.4 acres from the CP, or the Clustered Preservation District, to the Ag 1, or Agricultural District. The property is located northwest of Lawrence, just north if K10 was extended to the north, and it is within the 3-mile radius of Lecompton. And as we mentioned, Lecompton was provided with a copy of the application. The Planning Commission reviewed it, and they had no concerns, so they're not attending. It is not within the urban growth area of the city of Lawrence. It's a very unique kind of a property. There's some issues going on, so I'm going to try to explain that as I go through this, why the rezoning is even necessary. But this shows the subject property, and the property that's being requested for rezoning is outlined in blue. It's about the 6 acres, and if you look at the inset, you can see the topography is just not conducive to building. This was platted in 1988 before we had GIS and these handy contour maps. So today it would probably never have been platted as a lot. But when the owner went to get his building permits, develop his building plans, he discovered it would be extremely difficult, if possible, to build on this lot. But there is a relatively level portion just to the west on the adjacent parcel, and that's where he would like to build. And as you can see from the contour lines, it's much more, it's not exactly level, but it's a much better slope. So this is where his issues come in. His subject property is a platted lot. It was platted as part of Twin Ridge Heights West subdivision. And the property to the west, he owns it, but it's unplatted. It's just a parcel in the Ag 1 district. And it is what we call an unvested parcel or unbuildable because it has no road frontage. So until it gets road frontage, then it could be subdivided to the subregs and it could be built on. So I want to go through kind of how zoning is tied to land divisions in the rural area. It's a little different than in the city because in the city we encourage density because it maximizes the efficiency of our infrastructure, whether it's our streets or utilities or city services. In the rural area, they want to accommodate development, but their goal is to maintain the rural character, so they want to limit it. So there are 2 agricultural districts. Ag 1 is a very limited district. What you can do is limited and your land divisions are limited. And the goal is to maintain agricultural land. If you want to leave that district and be more intense, do more land divisions, you have to rezone. The only land division that's possible in this district is the agricultural subdivision boundary survey. That's an exemption to the subregs. So if you meet the requirements of your zoning district, Ag 1, you have the right frontage, right width, you can divide 20 acres. And on this parcel we're looking at where he wants to build does not have that currently. The Ag 2, transitional agriculture, it has several options. One is a certificate of survey, which takes 20 acres, a minimum parcel size of 10 acres. You can do a homestead exemption. That just divides off homes that were there prior to 2006. And then there's the CP, the clustered preservation, which is the current zoning. In this district, you can do a clustered development certificate of survey. You can have parcels as small as 3 or 5 acres, or you can plat, and this property is platted. And when we first thought of this, my initial thought was, why don't they just rezone a little bit and replat and make a larger CP lot? But actually, the CP district is a closed district. It was closed a few years ago in response to a lot of residential development that was occurring in the urban growth areas. So to slow that, the district is currently closed. So it would not be possible just to expand that lot through rezoning and replatting. So one option, and we worked with the county councilor, zoning and code staff, and planning staff, we all worked together. The option that we landed on is they can vacate the platted lot, which will turn it back into a parcel. It'd be unbuildable. They can rezone to the Ag 1 district, and that's what's before you today. The request to vacate is before the Board of County Commissioners. When the zoning goes to them, it would be up to them. That's all regulated by state statute. There's nothing in our subregs about that. If the Board of County Commissioners approves the vacation and then approves the rezoning, we would have a large area of Ag 1 property, and then they could do that agricultural subdivision boundary survey and expand this property as much as they want, as long as it's at least 20 acres, and then they would be able to build where they'd like to. So I'll go through the rezoning with our review criteria. We always look at, is the rezoning compatible to zoning and land uses in the area? The area has primarily 3 types of zonings. Predominantly, there's CP, the clustered preservation, and that's where the platted subdivision is. We have Ag 1, the larger. While it's agricultural, most of these parcels are wooded rather than agricultural. And then we have Ag 2, which are just smaller parcels. Primarily, they were there when the zoning and code was revised in 2020. So revising this to Ag 1 would be very compatible with other zoning in the area. And if you look at the land use graphic on the right, it's a very wooded parcel. The use of this would change somewhat because the driveway would have to come in and curve around in order to accommodate the slope, and then they would build a house here, but the use would be relatively the same. So this rezoning and land use being proposed, just moving the house to the west, is very compatible. And then we look at whether or not it's compatible or would it maintain the character of the area. And normally we look at an area of about a mile from the subject property. And as you can see, this is very unique in that agriculture, most of the time when you look at a mile away, agriculture is predominant use. Here we have woodlands, we have a lot of residential properties, and we have grassland, so agriculture. So it's kind of got 3 predominant uses. But as we can see in the graphic, if we're just moving the residents from this lot to the parcel next door, we have not altered the character of the neighborhood or the area at all. And then we look at, is the property suitable for the uses to which it is currently restricted? And the CP district has a very limited list of uses. They're all residential or uses that are ancillary to residential uses. You can have minor utilities, daycares, and home occupations or dwellings. And looking at the graphic here, there's a steep ravine down the middle and then the steep slopes on either side. It's not suitable to any of those. Probably the only use that is suitable is really the woodland that's there now, and then the proposed driveway, not actually a use, but that would be acceptable. The adjacent parcel, being more level, is suitable to the proposed use. And then we look at, is it in conformance with the comprehensive plan? In Chapter 2, Environment and Natural Resources, the plan recommends that we adopt regulations to minimize grading and steep slope development. And this rezoning would remove the need to develop on steep slopes on the subject property. So while we're not making regulations at this time, it is in conformance with the intent of that regulation. It also wants us to protect and preserve the rural character, seeking conservation of identified sensitive lands. The comprehensive plan does identify steep slopes as sensitive lands. And also in the growth and development chapter, to provide housing opportunities while conserving the overall rural character. And this job of changing the rezoning of this property so that the house could be developed just slightly to the west would still maintain the ability to have a house while conserving the rural character. Other things that we look at is the area plans, but there are no area plans adopted for this area. So it is, comprehensive plan is the guiding document for this area. How long has it been vacant as zoned? Well, it's been vacant. It's never been developed, but since 1988, when it was platted, it's never been developed. It has the current zoning since 2020, and so basically it's just undeveloped primarily due to the topography. And to what extent would the rezoning detrimentally affect nearby property? The agricultural district is also very limited in the uses that are allowed. There's a few uses that are allowed that are not allowed in the CP district, and there's several that are allowed with conditional use permits, but those have to go through an intensive process, very similar to rezoning. But the uses that are allowed by right, one is agritourism. So if you're a low-intensity agritourism use, you register with the Zoning and Codes Office. If you're a higher intensity, your registration has to go through the county commission. But in each case, the conditions can be applied to minimize the impact on neighbors. And another use that's allowed is a ag research. And that does not require commission approval, except that there is a site plan. So it goes to the county commission with public notice. So if there's any activity that might impact neighbors, because there are residential neighbors in the area, the commission could require a smaller scope. They could require buffering, but the use would be permitted. So due to the limited amount of uses that are allowed in agriculture and the use-specific standards that are required, rezoning to the ag district would not introduce a lot of impactful uses into the area, and there'd be no detrimental impact. And then since there is no detrimental impact, there'd be no gain to the public health, safety, and welfare by the denial, but the hardship to the applicant would be that they would have to do the engineering or to be able to develop on this lot, or the lot may be undevelopable. And so again, this is the rezoning review criteria. We did not go over criteria 8 because that's only when you're rezoning away from the Ag 1 district. We look at whether or not it's suitable for agricultural uses. It's actually not well suited, but the agricultural district is also a district for open space, and it is well suited for the open space. And so staff does recommend approval of this rezoning request and forwarding it to the Board of County Commissioners with a recommendation for approval. I'm happy to answer questions if you have any, and I know the applicant is present today as well.
Thank you, Mary. Yes. Would the applicant like to speak?
I think we can be brief. Good evening, Commissioners. Patrick Watkins on behalf of Cody and Ashley Chrisline. I believe Cody's on the Zoom too. They are out of town, or else they'd be here. I think it started with pretty simple intentions of building their home, but they are all tangled up in the code. And planners have done their work, and I think we can appreciate Mary's presentation, their work with the county. This is an exercise to straighten things out. We don't know of any opposition. Pretty simple. Let's let them build their house. If you have any questions, let us know.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Is there any public comment? Is there anyone here in the room tonight or on Zoom to give public comment on this item? I don't see anyone. Becky, do you?
No, not a member of the public, no.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll bring it back to the commission. Other questions? Yes.
Question for Mary. So Mary, before they can build, they need a survey, correct? They need to do a survey. What is that survey called? The subdivision?
It's an agricultural subdivision boundary survey, so it's an exemption from the subregs. It would go through zoning and codes. They would look to
Okay.
make sure it meets the dimensional standards, and then the county surveyor would approve it.
It's zoning and codes. It's not us. It's
No.
not city, county. It's zoning and codes. Okay.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Mary, is it correct that the larger parcel, the 86 parcel, at this point has no access to a public road? But that the rezoning would essentially give it access to a public road?
That's right. Yeah, it's currently what you call landlocked. It's not buildable. But once the zoning happens and then that agricultural subdivision boundary survey happens, the parcel would have access. And it depends if they want to include the whole 86 acres and make that all one buildable parcel, or if they just want to go up to 20 acres. It's totally up to the applicant.
But at that point, they could develop more than just a single house.
They could develop what's allowed in the agricultural district, which would be a house, an accessory dwelling unit, or those uses that I mentioned in the staff report, which require additional approval, like agritourism use. If they wanted to have trails through the woods or some sort of events in the woods that could be agritourism, they have to go and register either with the Zoning and Codes Office or the County Commission. If they want to do the value add agricultural research, that would have to go to the County Commission as a site plan. And I can't remember, there are two more that are allowed. Fireworks sales, those are allowed, but that would take a permit, and I think those are the only ones.
Could they develop into several 20-acre parcels?
No, because you have to have the frontage for one. So it would be the road frontage. Actually, there's very little road frontage because the road is a cul-de-sac. So there's no frontage requirement, but that would be enough for one parcel. So until it annexes into a city, that's all. One house or one accessory dwelling unit would be all that it could have.
Thank you.
So I just had a follow up to that. So the frontage road is that cul-de-sac, and anything that would be built on that would be a private road and wouldn't be, because they'll have to figure a driveway or to get to the property, right? But that would be private, so it wouldn't count as frontage road, right?
That's right. It would just be a
They have to get to that
driveway.
cul-de-sac.
Yeah, the cul-de-sac is the public road, so that would be the end. And so that's the end of the road. And then the little part that curves around, that's just their driveway.
Yeah, and that doesn't count for like not being landlocked.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, your frontage has to be on a public road. So just that little piece that's on the cul-de-sac, that's what's meeting that requirement.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? All right, I'll look for
A motion?
Yes, please.
That we recommend approval of rezoning Z 250006, approximately 6.42 acres, Lot 5, Block 1, Twin Ridge Heights West Subdivision, located at the terminus of North 1917 Road, from CP, Clustered Preservation District, to AG1, Agricultural District, based on the findings contained in the staff report.
Okay, is there a second?
I will second.
Okay. All in favor?
Discussion.
Oh, is there any discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Munch, did you raise your hand? Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, item passes. So we will move to the third item that we have tonight, which will be presented by Sandy Day.
Yay.
Here.
It'll take me just a second.
While she gets that ready, can I ask a point of order of Jeff? Do we need to say, forward, the part about forwarding to whichever body with a recommendation or not? Does that need to be a part of a motion?
It helps if it is, but it's kind of assumed since you can't approve anything that it would be.
That wouldn't do that? Okay, I kind of assumed that, so I didn't say anything, but I just wanted to double check so that you didn't leave anybody hanging.
Kurt, if I may, is the agenda up on this screen?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Is that it?
That is it.
Good.
I don't know why I couldn't see it. Okay. Wait a minute. This looks like Mary's. Go back here. I am sorry. It's taking me a minute to get here.
No problem.
Okay.
If you can start talking, I'll share that for you.
Thank you. Good evening, Sandy Day Planning. The item that you're considering next is a request to rezone property. This is a companion application to an annexation that went directly to the City Commission. Because it is less than 10 acres, you do not have to consider the annexation. So the City Commission received that annexation, and depending on your actions tonight, they would see an ordinance for the annexation and potentially the rezoning at their meeting later next month. The proposed request is to rezone the property from its current agricultural zoning to a city-compatible zoning. They are proposing the R2, which is consistent with what kind of the planned land uses are along this area. This is North Iowa Street, except for the properties that are in the county. They carry that county rural road designation. The property to the north is UR. This is a holdover from the older code, where when that property came into the city, they were uncertain of what they wanted to do, so they just requested that urban reserve zoning district. And then the property to the south of the subject also carries that same R2 zoning that's being requested. The applicant's intent is to actually subdivide the property. That would be a future application that would have a preliminary and final plat application. Those items are not before you. There is an existing house that's been there since about 1940. There is no neighborhood or sector plan that this property is a part of, so we do generally just to defer back to Plan 2040, and that does talk about bringing these kinds of properties into the city. This is property owner generated, so the city is not out there requesting property owners to annex. They typically, in this area, will request annexation if they're wanting to do some kind of development or if they have a problem with water or a failing septic system. In this particular instance, there's an existing house. They're looking to potentially divide this property in the future to create a second residential dwelling. Happy to answer any questions. I don't believe the applicant is online. I've been trying to reach them for the last couple of days. I don't know what's going on, but that's the rezoning.
Great. Thank you, Sandy.
Sure.
Well, if the applicant isn't online, it doesn't look like it, we will take any public comment. Is there anyone here in the room or on Zoom that would like to speak to this agenda item? I don't see any.
No one in the room and no one online indicating they wish to speak.
Thank you, Becky. And so we'll bring it back to the commission. Yes, Commissioner Dufour.
Sandy, so how does one apply for annexation? Is that like how do you do that?
I think it's called an annexation petition. There's a form that they typically would fill out. If it's more than 10 acres, it would come to this body for action. If it's less than 10 acres, then it goes straight to the City Commission to receive.
So it's just a form?
It's a form.
Okay, gotcha.
Any other questions?
How does it affect like finances? Like will the city automatically, once it's annexed, provide sidewalks and all the other stuff, or is that how does that work? How does that?
So a sidewalk is typically considered when you have subdivision plat, if you have public improvement plans.
Oh, okay.
In this particular property, we haven't done a lot of research with it. There is the ability to extend sanitary sewer and water to this property, probably from the service lines that are kind of already in the area.
I see.
Because there's probably lacking sidewalk in
Right.
this one, my expectation would be that they would make a request to do an agreement not to protest formation of a benefit district. When there's enough properties along there, the city could do a benefit district for future sidewalk. For 1 or 2 lots like this, it's not terribly efficient for anybody. So-
And the property owner would give up land for the sidewalk, correct? They would-
So we would go through the subdivision process and make the determination whether or not there's enough right-of-way.
Okay.
Preferably sidewalks get constructed in public right-of-way. I'm not sure what the width is there.
Gotcha.
Like the next item, it probably does not meet the design standard of a principal arterial, so
Gotcha.
we would conceivably have a variance.
Gotcha.
I have a question. I'm not really necessarily just about this, but under the new code, as things are coming in, how do you make the determination on the zoning request? Is it just what an applicant requests it to come in as under the new zoning code, or how does that kind of work with?
So we will go through a pre-submittal application with an applicant. Most times we'll have an idea of what it is that they're requesting. There are going to be times where we would have a conversation with that applicant saying, plan says this, we recommend whatever. So we do have those discussions on a pretty regular basis. On this particular one, I don't think there was a ton of discussion. There's these piano key lots that, it's all but surrounded by the city. And you have the Miller and Wells Acres subdivisions, which are immediately to the east, which are not in the city, but those 2 subdivisions are practically surrounded. But there's some issues with trying to get sanitary sewer in to serve there. So there's a lot of moving parts kind of in this whole area. I don't know that a ton of density right across the street from the industrial use is going to work out terribly well. They have a unique piece of property, so we'll evaluate some of that more as we move through the subdivision component piece. But as far as the zoning goes, we didn't flag this as needing to be something drastically different than what they requested.
Yeah, I just didn't know, since I hadn't really thought about zoning as much until we went through the land development code. And now it's like, oh, how do you end up being a this or a that? And we have more narrow character.
I mean, the property owner has the right to ask, right?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Any other discussions? Anything else? Look for a vote. Yes. Motion.
Go ahead. I'll do it next time.
Move approval, request rezone Z-25-0005, approximately 0.9 acres from AG2 to district to R2 district, 1766 East 1300 Road, based on the findings presented in the staff report and forward to the City Commission with recommendation for approval.
Second. 2 seconds.
Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item passes. We do have one item for miscellaneous new or old business, and I believe that is also Sandy Day.
So this is the project that keeps on giving.
That is a very polite way to put it.
This one actually is a little bit on staff. The variance request that is coming to you is for Peterson Road. Project first came in, they included a variance for Peterson Road. Did some revisions, we're proposing to dedicate right-of-way for Peterson Road. Continuing through the review process, meeting with Evergy about some city infrastructure, which happens to also be in Evergy's exclusive easement. We determined, global royal we, determined that the dedication that they were showing on the plan is just a little piece of Peterson Road. It's not really going to benefit anybody. There is way more headache associated with trying to do that vacation because there's also some underlying easement for them to try and vacate that and then dedicate it as right-of-way. Finally, I think the city engineer said, you know what, we're not widening this road. We're not moving Evergy's transmission lines. Things are going to connect the way they're going to connect. I support the variance. Please do that. So that's how this came to you. So this was not the applicants doing. This was all of the discussions we had throughout the review process. So that is why that item is before you tonight.
Thank you, Sandy.
Yeah.
And I don't believe the applicant's here. Am I correct in that?
No, I've been trying to get them for a couple of days, so I don't know what fires they're putting out, but.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on this item from anyone here tonight or online? I don't see any, so we will bring it back for discussion of the commission. Any discussion?
I have a question for Sandy. Sandy, I didn't understand when we have these variances, if they don't hit the newspaper for the publication, that doesn't matter. We don't need to provide any information prior to the meeting. Any notice, correct?
I'll let Jeff respond to that if you can.
Correct. Typically, if we know these in advance, we will include them on the legal, but there's not anything that particularly ties to that one. Like Sandy knows, sometimes these come up quickly, and instead of having an applicant wait out 30 days for your next meeting, like in this case, we do bring these up under miscellaneous new and old business to help it, but there's not a noticing requirement like you would see as with a rezoning or a special use permit.
Is this the only kind of thing that we don't have to do a proper notice in advance of our meeting?
Going through all the different application types in my head, most of your application types have a different process because they're statutorily required by the state. This one's a function of your subdivision regulations that are kind of your choice, effectively the governing body's choices of putting those together in there. And so most of the time, you don't really run into those. So there are a bit of a different noticing procedures for those that usually show up in the subdivision regulations where the local municipalities have a little bit more latitude in the way that they like to construct them. So at the top of my head, I can't think of another one that would run into a situation like this one. In all honesty, though, you're also one of the few planning commissions that probably see variances. Most of these are handled administratively by staff and let the city engineers take a look at them because they have that expertise of knowing the rights of way and those details. So it's a quirk in our code in some respect.
So when we look at subdivision regulations, can we consider not having these variances come to the planning commission, but just to have them done administratively?
Yes, that is something the Planning Commission over many years has expressed and something we're looking forward to maybe bringing forward when we get a text amendment and have staff capacity to bring one up to you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion?
So Sandy, the net effect of this is Peterson gets narrower? Is that?
Peterson doesn't change.
Okay.
Because there are some other easements. So we have the effective right-of-way for a segment of it.
Okay.
We just don't have it technically as right-of-way. So between the right-of-way and the easement, and then the new easement, I've got the necessary space to do the engineering that has to be done. And the city engineer has said, no more. We're not widening, we're not adding turn lanes, we're not, everything they'll do within the existing right-of-way or easement that exists.
And the applicant is okay with all of this?
Yes, they were very okay with this. They were on the call when we were working with Evergy, when we were trying to work all these pieces out.
Okay,
So.
got it. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? All right, look for a motion.
I'll do it. I motion to approve the variance to allow the reduction of right-of-way for Peterson Road from 150 feet to a variable not less than 100 feet associated with minor subdivision plat 25-0003, Fall Creek Farms 22nd plat.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, motion passes. Thank you. I believe that's all we have. I'll look for a motion to, Jeff has something for us first.
Just an update real quick. I wanted you all to know that Commissioner Bill Wilson was appointed to the Planning Commission. He'll be joining you in the future. He had a previous engagement, so being quickly appointed to Planning Commission didn't quite allow him to be here tonight. But Commissioner Wilson will be joining you going forward. So I just wanted you to have that knowledge.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and we are adjourned for this month. Do not come back.